Hey everybody, Mherex here. I'm proud to be bringing you episode 4 of the longest weekly running episodic WWE Champions podcast, D.I.Cable Guy. As always, this podcast is brought to you by TWO, pinning the competition since 1897, and Big Red, it's delicious. So we have a pretty great show on tap for you guys today. We're going to talk a lot about Turn 1 feud guys in particular. We got some pretty excellent listener questions we're going to answer, but really the thing I'm the most excited for about this particular podcast is, drumroll here, I know you've all been wanting for it, you've all been calling for it, is the special guest this week. It's taken me a long time to get him nailed down, but I finally got him here, and I think you'll find that the hype has been worth the wait. I think he's gonna deliver on everything, all of his promise, all of his expectations that we have on him. So with all that being said, I would like to introduce this week's guest, the Button. So Button, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, man. Although you have built me up quite a bit, I'm feeling a lot of pressure to live up to those expectations.
Well, I don't think you need to be too worried about it because, after all, I'm pretty sure you can just push a button to deliver.
Yes, but it's a different button.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't just push myself. I mean, I could, but some states frown upon that.
I was going to ask, is that legal?
In some states. It depends.
Okay. So, never mind. We could go off on a tangent on that. So I know a lot of our viewers are curious about you. Where do you come from? Where do you go? What do you do? Like, do you play champion? Like, I need some kind of background. I got nothing. I know nothing. I just know a lot of people are confused. Some people seem to think you're this like mysterious being that grants special gifts. Other people say you don't actually exist. I think we've disproven those folks, but well, you're the Button. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, so it's interesting that people think that I don't exist. In reality, I actually exist simultaneously in all timelines. So what happens when people don't see me, it's just that they've split into an alternate future.
Huh.
Yeah. That's what's going on.
Alternate future timelines existing. I think it's safe to say most of our listeners probably aren't capable of comprehending this.
That's fair. I'm used to dealing with lower level minds, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have a few of my own questions. I have used. Okay, thank you. I have used you before. I've used you to claim
satisfactorily.
Yes, actually, I owe Mr. T to you.
Okay, good. If you could give me a 5-star Google review, I'd appreciate that.
I've already done that, and I gave you a Yelp review as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Do you have... Well, now this is kind of a new thing. You're a guest, and it's not been easy to get you here, so I want to give you a chance to plug anything that you might be selling or promoting. Is there anything you would like to plug?
No, actually, in my state of consciousness, I actually don't have any physical or material needs.
Really?
Yeah, I just exist.
Well, I do. That brings up another question.
I do like Big Red.
What? You like Big Red?
Yeah, I mean, Big Red is delicious.
It is delicious, but you're a Button.
Well, I don't see what that has to do with anything.
How can a Button drink Big Red It's
I mean,
delicious, by the way.
I'm talking, aren't I?
Uh, I think you got me there.
Yeah.
What other, or never mind. That's not important. Okay. The button likes Big Red. That question has been answered. That's good to know. So that's one of our sponsors, obviously, Big Red. It's got a lot to do with the show. They've been here since very early on. But do you have anything to do with TWO? That's our other sponsor, and TWO makes this show happen.
The founder of TWO actually made a blood pact, which caused me to appear, which gave him the financial backing to start TWO.
Wait, so TWO exists because they used the button? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Huh. Interesting.
As I said, I've existed in all times, always.
Okay. Well, I guess, there's a lot more questions. Really, we could do a whole show dedicated to you, but that's not what this podcast is about. In fact, I'm not really sure what this podcast is about, but it's not about the button per se. So I think we'll move on and we'll talk about some of our listener questions. So we'll get into the mailbag here. And much like last week, I think there are some legitimate questions. Also, I think maybe there's a little bit of trolling going on. Who am I to judge? I just read the questions. So I'm going to jump right in and say, well, first off, Payroll brought up a great point, and he said that he was disappointed that we left Brutus out of the discussion last week. And I have to say, you weren't here for that button. We had some other forgettable guy.
I was watching.
Yeah, I think it was like Dr. Skeletor or something like that. He wasn't much of a doctor. But the point being is we really dropped the ball on Brutus. He's a 9K coach. He reduces sub turns. He's especially good in the ladies game as a coach, reducing the subs.
I thought you meant he was just popular with the ladies.
I mean, he might be. I don't know. He is a barber, so
yes, because barbers are historically known for their popularity with the ladies.
Yes, they are. You didn't know that? It's a thing.
Fair enough.
All right. So, anyway, he is certainly a great trainer and someone we should have discussed, and I dropped the ball on that, so I take full responsibility. Great coach. He's got an interesting move set. He can do some stuff. He can turn some power gems. He can make some heal gems, make them yellow. He's got a sub. He can do some things. He can heal. He can be a decent blitzer. I wouldn't use him as a counter to Booker T because, he's a little too slow charging, I think, on the move that turns the power gems. I could be wrong about that. I don't have it in front of me right this second. Did you want to say anything about Brutus?
No, like you mentioned, he's definitely someone that at a minimum you're going to want to get to 5K. And then if you wanted to take him up further for whatever reason, like let's say he has some type of sentimental value, sure. He's going to be able to do some things. He's not personally someone that I would focus on, but there's definitely worse people in the game. Also at 9K, you do get that extra reduction in submission. So if you want 3 turns instead of 2, it's definitely not going to hurt you.
Yeah. I think if like you're doing a bunch of battling with a female in particular, and like you have a showboat female that happens to be your favorite, say like Paige with gear or something, then Brutus 9K probably makes a bunch of sense as one of your go-to coaches. So definitely one we missed. So thank you, Payroll, for that. That definitely wasn't a troll question. That was legit. Always appreciate that. Which incidentally leads me to the next question, also by Payroll, who at least apparently seemingly is interested in this show, so appreciate that. So shout out to Payroll. This question is, why is the best feuder, Kurt Angle, Olympic Hero, the most underrated card in the game?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah. Do you Button, do you have any kind of things you can do? Like, can you like analyze? Is there a button I could press to have you analyze Kurt Angle? Do you do anything like that?
So I already know everything, but I know you just want to press the button. So yes, I will pretend that I need you to press the button for me to do the analysis. So go ahead, you may press the button.
Boop.
Analysis complete.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Impressive.
I mean, could you imagine if you had to press the button and then like 3 weeks later, like the card just showed up in your game, like in your inbox, like, oh hey, by the way, here's this card you earned 3 weeks ago. No, the button's got to deliver on time.
So you're saying you're kind of like the mailman. You always deliver?
No, not really.
Okay.
I
It
wouldn't
was
compare
worth
myself to the mailman.
it was worth a shot. Okay. So what did your analysis reveal about the Olympic Hero?
So I like Kurt Angle as a person. Uh, I also like him as a character in the game. So he has a couple of things that I think overall are very valuable. So he has a choose move in his primary color. So he is a technician. He has a choose green. He also has a green move that creates blues, and blue is the color of the choose move. So if you get creative and smart with the placement of your gems, you can create cascades or put your gems in a situation where you'll get more blues, and then use the green to go back and try to get even more blues. So you can kind of go back and forth with the blues and the greens a little bit. And then on the way, he has a green submission. So, you can stop people. Let's say you need one more, you're not quite refilled on either the green or the blue. You should be able to pretty much every time you use your your choose green, that should more or less fill up your submission, especially if you're using Del Rio on him. Then, yeah, that'll fill up your submission. And then if you haven't filled up your blues, you just use a submission to slow your opponent down. And yeah, it's a nice move set. It works. He has some countdown gems, which are kind of interesting, because he has one move where he will reduce them all. So you could get a couple of countdown moves out on the board, and then use the black to bring them down by 3, and then make a lot of them go off at once. The problem is it's kind of a one-trick pony, so you do that once, and then you're just kind of sitting there looking around, wondering what to do next. So personally, I would go with the blue, green, green to kind of semi-recycle and then slow people down in the process. I personally would not agree that he is the best feuder. As someone with a sub and a choose move, yeah, he's gonna win you matches. You shouldn't really have problem winning matches. But in terms of being the best feuder, I wouldn't quite put him in that territory quite yet. But yeah, very very solid, definitely usable, especially if he's a favorite of yours.
Yeah, I think he's probably a lot more usable than people think. If you also, say, have Bruno to toss on for a coach, it makes the sub a little more deadly. He's not a turn 1 guy, however, you can definitely use him, because, I mean, every feud, you're filling in people for line bonuses and stuff, and you get a bonus for using a different guy, so not everyone you have is going to be turn 1. And a guy like Kurt Angle, Olympic Hero, if he's your favorite, it won't hurt you necessarily bringing him all the way up and using him. I actually can vouch. I've feuded a bunch with Payroll when we were in Victorious, and I've personally seen his Kurt Angle do serious work. So Again, not top tier, but also super usable. And I don't have an issue if someone likes him leveling him up, because he's got a lot of ability and probably fun to play, especially if you're a Kurt Angle mark. So yeah. Next question comes from Ashley Elson. First time commenter, I believe, in the mail section here. Chad Gable is the best technician in the game. Junkyard Dog is the best showboat, and Powerhouse Roman is the bomb at 9-star platinum. I feel like this is a troll comment. Button, what do you have to say?
It doesn't. So first of all, it doesn't sound like a question. It sounded like he just said a bunch of stuff.
Like statements.
Yeah, I don't think he gets the question concept. But I can for sure talk about the comments that he made if you'd like.
I would. I'm a little bit uncertain with this comment, and I don't know if I really feel like addressing it personally. So I would prefer if you did it for me. Plus, everyone really likes you, and I've built up a little bit of heat these last few shows, so I kind of wanna lower that a little bit. So go ahead.
Bring it down to a simmer.
You got it.
So, all right. So first off, Chad Gable. Gable is also usable. He has a lot of similar characteristics to Kurt Angle. So he's got two moves that are going to feed into each other back and forth. He has let's see here. He has a yellow move that destroys green gems. And then he has a green move that creates yellow gems. So those back and forth are going to help those refill them by themselves. And then on the way, much like Kurt Angle, he has a submission. So he's a lot like the tech version of Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes basically plays exactly the same. You have one gem, one color creating gems. You have another color breaking the color that you just created the gems with. And then you have the submission to try to hold things down. His sub is a little bit more than those other two guys, so his sub costs 13. If you have Triple H, obviously that's going to be a little bit more helpful. He's quicker than Kurt Angle, so in a feud situation, he is someone that you can run turn one. His destroy random greens only costs 7. So that's going to be ready to go right away. You use that to destroy greens. If you have someone like Cesaro training him, that's going to load up your green move immediately. So then you can use 2 moves turn 1, put some more yellows on the board, and then you have your choice of either filling up your submission by matching a green if they're more on the board, or you can match another yellow, and then your yellow move is ready to go again. And like I said, you fill up your submissions on the way. So yeah, very, very usable, quicker than Angle, because his move's a little bit cheaper, ready to go turn 1. Overall, I probably still overall like Angle more, just the versatility that you have from that choose move. But again, yeah, if he's someone that for some reason you really enjoy, yeah, he's for sure usable, but much like Angle, I don't think he's a top tier guy, but a lot better than probably people give him credit for.
Yeah, I think.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think pretty much everyone says he's hot garbage. So I don't know that he's necessarily hot garbage, but I would also rather level Angle, but he might potentially be usable. So yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of guy where if you ever went up against him and he was like highly leveled, he would do one move and then suddenly the other move would get loaded, and then he would do the second move, and you may run into a situation where he catches a good cascade, and now suddenly his sub is filled and he can use his other move, and suddenly you've had 2 or 3 moves done on you, and you have a submission waiting for you as soon as it's his turn again, and you'll be like, what is happening here? So he can for sure catch people off guard, but you're probably never going to run into him in the wild. But yeah, definitely not as bad as people think he is.
All right.
Uh, Junkyard Dog, however, is as bad as people think he is. Unfortunately, can't do much for you there until he gets that move to create, what is it, immobile gems at 5 star. Yeah, he's still not very good.
Agreed.
What was the last guy? Roman.
Powerhouse Roman at 9-star platinum.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to get to 9 star platinum. I mean, in your timeline, it's going to be a long time before y'all get there. So I wouldn't wait for that.
Wait. Hold on.
Mm.
Have you seen 9-star platinum in one of your time continuums you've been to?
Yeah.
Wow. Can you give the listeners one tip? If there's one guy you could level at 9-star, who would it be?
It wouldn't mean anything to you guys right now because you guys haven't even seen him on television.
All right. Okay. I can
Sorry.
accept that. No, that's okay.
But yeah, in terms of Roman, yeah, I mean he's a powerhouse, so he's inherently good. Um, he's making a bunch of blast gems. His moves feed into each other. He's another guy where, yeah, if you get a good board, like, and you're going up against him, he's gonna do one or two moves, and you're gonna get pinned, and all three of his moves are gonna be ready to go next turn, and then you're gonna take a bunch of damage again, and you're gonna be left wondering what happened right now. How am I getting destroyed by Roman? So Roman, like was mentioned in the Powerhouse episode, Roman's pretty good. He's definitely not someone to be considered, one of the joke characters. This at 4 star, obviously, is what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
yeah, at 9 star, yeah, he's only going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, like, so he's got to choose blast move. So it's a little bit higher charge. It's a 10 charge, but if you got X-Pac, one match and you're on it. So, and then he's going to blow the board up. So, and then he's got, destroy random reds to recycle to the choose blast and stuff. So, yeah, Roman is certainly viable. You probably have a better powerhouse, but he's not bad and he's free, so everyone does have him.
No.
No, so yeah, I mean that's enough probably about Roman. He's solid. So we have two more questions that are kind of related. We have payroll again saying, where are all these buttons and choices you guys talk about? And then Roberto D, who actually this week, I believe, used the button. He sent me a direct message. It was pretty cool to see. He said he used the button and he got 100 of the new Triple H shards. So shout out to you, button. Roberto D pulled 100 Triple H shards using the button.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that push very well.
I'll let him know that you remember it and rather enjoyed it.
Yeah.
His question was, any feud button? So I think he's calling for a feud button.
Are you just going to ignore the where are all the buttons question?
I mean, I read that first. Where are all these buttons and choices you guys talk about?
I mean, I'm right here.
Would you like to address that one first?
I
mean, you're the guest. It's kind of your show.
I'm curious because I mean I'm right here. Like I don't hide. I mean I'm just a regular guy. I mean I bend the cosmic realm one leg at a time, just like any of you guys.
And also, Payroll seems confused. He's talking about buttons in plural form. So, well, maybe I'm confused and maybe Payroll's right. Are there other buttons out there? Are you a singular all-powerful button? If so, where did you come from? Like, this creates lots of questions now for me.
So, as I mentioned, I exist in all timelines. So there are obviously many buttons. However, they are all me.
So there are many buttons.
So the answer is yes.
There are many buttons and you are them all.
Yes. Again, I knew what you were going to ask. That's why I gave you the answer before you asked.
I mean, I appreciate that. It
Yeah, no problem.
saves me the trouble. So I
Next question.
yeah. Do you have is are you able to help with feud? I think is what Roberto's getting at. Like, can he push a button and negate those bad cascades that are surely going to happen? Will pushing the button make your skip turn strap proc, for example, or go off if you don't understand the term proc? Activate, maybe you might use. Um,
Yeah.
Like, can I push a button and you guarantee me as Davey would say, Davey D, cascado tostado? Will you give us tostados?
So I can give you tostados, um, but not cascado tostados. So if you wanted like tostados with the cheese dip, by the way, I went ahead and replenished your cheese dip. I noticed that you were low last week, so I figured I'd be a good guest and bring some along for you.
Oh,
Uh, yeah. So I can give you tostados for your cheese dip, but in terms of mid game, that is one thing that the game representatives came and they asked me um, mid game to really not interfere with the combatants. It's kind of like in the 24/7 championship, where if you're having an official match, like they say, hey guys, like, can we call timeout here for a second? So yeah, I exist. I'm still watching over all the realms. But mid match, I choose not to interfere. I let you guys kind of handle that on your own. I do work indirectly, though, obviously, because you can use me to get characters that will improve your feuding substantially.
okay. So if I'm understanding this correctly, basically what you're saying is you will not interfere or intercede, if you will, in an active feud match. You will let the combatants determine the outcome themselves. You won't influence a cascade here, a wild card there, a dodge here, a crit there. You're saying you will not do that. However, what you are saying you will do is you will allow a press of the button, you in this case, to potentially obtain one of those fantastic feud characters that are basically an I win button. Say, for example, Hogan? Question mark?
Yes, so I would say in your dimension, your understanding of it is probably the best that you're capable of. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty close.
Okay. Well, all of this talk about feud and buttons has really got me thinking that, well, first off, actually, I'm kind of thirsty, so I think now would be a good time to take a drink of a delicious Big Red. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Big Red, it's delicious.
It really is. Um, that being said, um, the button and I have put our heads together and come up with some lists for all of you of turn one feud guys, because, well, the button won't intercede directly in a feud match. He said the best thing he could do to help would be to show you a list of guys that potentially can do things on turn one, so you get started faster maybe than your opponent if you happen to take the button's advice. So we're going to pull that up, and the first kind of turn one guys we're going to talk about are strikers. We may not go super in depth into all of them. Some of them are not necessarily, we're not necessarily saying to use them. These are just guys that will have moves that can work on turn one. So we're not saying they're like top tier, best tier, that kind of stuff. We're simply pointing out guys that you could use and do moves on turn one with perks. And also guys that potentially could surprise you with moves on turn one with perks. So that's kind of the gist of this. And Striker's going to be the first one we're going to talk about. So Button, with all that being said, let's talk about Striker, sir.
Let's. So, one thing to kind of piggyback on what you were saying is it's important to realize that characters are going to be good in different parts of the game. So you're going to have some characters that are just good universally, no matter where you use them. And then there are going to be some characters that are especially good in feud because they have one or two moves that you're going to be able to get off turn one if you get those MP perks. So with MP perks and an MP trainer, the magic number that you're looking for is 7. If you have a double trainer or you have one of these trainers that give you one extra for a color, I mean, you could even start things that cost 8. If you have gear, then suddenly you are able to do really expensive things turn one, and it almost becomes unfair. So again, this isn't saying these are the best people in the game, but for feud, these are going to be maybe some people that if you're having trouble in feud, maybe these are going to be some of the people that you should work on bringing up. So, do you have, Mherex, do you have a particular person on here that you like a lot for feud? I know I have a favorite already on this list.
So current favorite, maybe not so much. However, up and coming absolute favorite, I have two of them that I really want to talk about, because one I think is surprising and one maybe is surprising, but might be one of the best strikers in the game, and I don't think he gets talked about that way often. So I'm going to start with NWO Ted. He's fairly rare in a sea of Attitude Era strikers and even NWO strikers. He's got some amazing abilities, and I think he may be the best striker in the game.
That's bold, sir.
It is, but he doesn't move a pin bar.
Back your case up.
Okay, so he's got a turn one move that's choose an area to turn to yellow. It's a purple move. So you use that purple move, you turn the area yellow, and then you can choose a row of gems to make into a mobile, and then you can turn those immobiles back into yellow, purple. Don't know right off. Anyway, the point is you use those 3 moves to recycle, and one of them, the one that's breaking the row, does not move the pin bar. So a lot of times you're getting off, once you start, 6, 7 moves in a turn. If your opponent was unlucky enough to move the pin bar close to pinning you, it's even more. You start factoring in striker gem damage and the fact that he could equip the boss plate, and that choose area would put that boss plate going off right away turn 1. And then you're not moving the pin bar, and you're going to get to some of those cross breaks from the boss plate. Yeah, he's got another move set where he's got a 5 MP choose black. So, I mean, a striker with a choose black, even though it doesn't choose a ton of them, it's super low MP. So NWO Ted can do things and surprise people. So he's very high on my striker list, both for feud, showdown, all kinds of stuff. Anything you could use a striker in.
He's very versatile. Like you said, he got a couple real viable builds. Not being able to move the pin bar makes him a little bit. It's easier to get several moves off. And yeah, having a low charge choose move. I mean, choose moves are always going to be good. So.
And with 5-star on the horizon, NWO Ted not moving the pin bar, there's also talk of them increasing the board size, and with that would obviously come an increased pin bar. So those guys that don't move the pin bar automatically become more valuable because you have more territory on the pin bar to work with. So I think that looks good for him. So that's one guy that I talked about off the bat. Why don't you go ahead and take one guy, so it's not just me talking for like 20 minutes and not giving you a chance, Button, to do your thing.
That's fair. So, I think NWO Ted is very good. He's not my favorite in terms of strikers. Would you rather I talk about my favorite, or specifically my feud favorite for strikers.
You know what? You can do both, and then we'll go back to one of mine. Go ahead. You do both. Pick whichever order you want.
All right. So, since we're already talking about favorites, I think one guy, which I think he is considered, you know, pretty top tier, but I think he should be in the argument for potentially best striker overall and one of the best characters in the game, Ken Shamrock. He is the most dangerous man in the world, and he may be one of the most dangerous characters in the game. What do you think about Ken Shamrock, sir?
So one of my faction mates in Team Slam uses him exclusively for Showdown with NWO Brett for the Attitude Link, I believe, and also the fact that if he needs to tag Brett in, all his moves are full, but he doesn't. He blazes through Showdown. He maxed Showdown faster than anyone else in my faction, and he used Shamrock exclusively. So I don't have any issue with that. Plus, one of the biggest booms in the game when you set up his choose move off of the buff the black gem move. So
Yes. So one of the you mentioned Hart or sorry, NWO Ted, and you talked about he does this, he does that, he recycles, you can do multiple moves, you do all this. Shamrock doesn't need all that. When he does the one move, the match is over. There's no recycling, there's no what am I going to do next. Like, you set your move up, you execute the move, and then you move on to your next match. Like, it's quite ridiculous. So for people that aren't familiar with Shamrock, he's a striker. Strikers have the highest gem damage in the game for their black. He has a 2-charge black move that will double his black damage at the cost of 1 red gem. He has a 3-charge move which will generate random blacks. So if you get a good cascade with that, you might accidentally win just from that. Especially if you're facing a showboat, because they can't kick out of anything. And then he has a choose black. So you've essentially put extra blacks on the board. You've doubled your black damage, and then you're going to do a choose black. It's tremendous. I mean, we're talking like 300k plus, just a huge pin that almost no one is going to kick out of, especially if you put any type of gem reduction or gem damage on your belts. He's just someone that you're very easily going to lose to very quickly if you're not paying attention.
yeah, he really is the world's most dangerous man. He's super powerful, very very good. No issues with someone taking him up, using him. Really fun moves that I love using him. Mine's 4-star bronze, and he'll eventually end up 4-star gold for me. No question. He's a great character.
Yeah. So I am guilty of using the button myself sometimes. So I have him actually at 4-star gold, and I have put a skip turn belt on him, which just makes him hilarious to use. Because I mentioned that the black move takes away a red. So in theory, you would have to wait a turn before causing the destruction. But if the skip turn goes off, then yeah, it's just your turn again, and then you win and you giggle while selecting your next opponent. So yeah, Shamrock is incredible as is. You put a skip turn belt on him, and it's borderline unfair.
I'm a little jealous of that setup. I'm not gonna lie. Excellent use of the skip strap. Thank you for not being generic and putting it on Z Austin. I think Shamrock's a lot better, more destructive choice, and I bet you do laugh when that goes off.
Yeah, and I mean it's not like Z Austin really needs any help. I feel the skip turn on Z Austin is good for defense, but I mean defense it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, we're all about getting the match done and over as fast as possible, and Shamrock can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think that's when we get into feud in general. I think that's going to be one of the big topics in terms of getting the points in a timely manner as opposed to just getting the points.
Yeah,
So when it comes to getting the points in a timely manner, um, it's very important to have one guy in your feud lineup that's going to take care of people on turn one. So you get some people that sometimes they'll put in some fodders, just to make you fight one extra turn because they're like, oh, we're gonna slow him down. We'll show him. But if you have a guy that's gonna win on turn one every single time against anything that's not a 4-star gold most of the time, that logic kind of doesn't really hold up. So for me, one of the guys that I really like, that some people will even tell you shouldn't level up, and I disagree with, is Striker Sting. So Striker Sting has a couple of moves that are ready turn one. He has a yellow, which will create extra greens, and then he has a yellow, which will do choose greens. So you put a bunch of greens on the board, you match them up. That's going to load a power gem move, so you can put those on the board just to do extra random damage every turn if for some reason the match isn't over. If you're smart about it, you can strategically try to refill some of your moves. And again, because they only cost 7, when you're feuding, basically you just need one yellow match and you're ready to go right away. And usually after two of that, even 4-star golds aren't going to kick out of that. So Striker Sting, like I said, for people, especially if you don't have a lot of these, premier loot people, if you haven't been using the button responsibly, he might be the best striker on your roster.
yeah, and everyone should have at least one turn one guy they can go into feud with, and you all got NWO Sting, so now one little caveat is he does need Rezer to perform at top level, so make sure you have Rezer, Fat ADR, Old ADR, whatever you call him.
Wait, is is this the timeline where Alberto Del Rio is no longer WWE champion?
I hate to break the news to you, Dr. Sparks, but yes.
Hmm, interesting.
Also,
Can't wait to get out of here.
also, him and Paige aren't together anymore. Spoiler.
No, that's fine. They don't make it in any time future.
Oh, okay. All right. Um, yeah, so agree. Striker Sting is excellent. So I'm going to throw another guy once I get him leveled out there, as I think could be one of my favorites, with a small caveat of needing that boss plate, which a lot of people did get, so I don't think I'm out of the realm of probability here talking about it, and that's going to be Dude Love. You have anything you want to say before I carry on with my discussion on Dude Love?
Uh, no. So typically, I am slightly down on characters where their choose move is their secondary color. But the one class that does get away with it is Striker. So as I just mentioned with Sting, he's choosing greens, not blacks. Because if he was choosing blacks, he would almost be as good as Shamrock. So at Striker, yeah, you can get away with the fact that you're using a non-primary color. So continue.
So, Dude Love, um, let me just pop over to this and show him to you guys. He's going to have a 7 MP choose move to make it into yellows. With the boss plate, you choose 6 of them, and now you've dropped a bunch of cross breaks on the board. Make a 5 match so you get an extra turn, and then or do a 4-row break and break one more blue gem, and then do a 3 match so you have you get your 7 or your 6 broken in one turn. Then you have your choose 4 gems to destroy blue move ready, and those cross breaks are on the board and you can destroy them. So board destruction and a striker at 4-star gold is pretty much game over. I don't know if there's a better guy for the skill plate than Dude Love, and that's why I plan on leveling him up. He's pretty solid even without the skill plate. So I think the skill plate makes him insane, and I'm super looking forward to that. Another great potential guy for the skill plate to go on would be Austin 316, because he can turn 1 choose yellow move, and then he's hitting the yellow move that throws out randoms, so you might get another connection, connect those cross breaks. So there's a couple guys that aren't necessarily rare that could be very amazing for you if you have that plate. So yeah, obviously Mr. T is super, super good. He's got some low charge moves. He's got 2 different sets where he can be turn 1. If there's a mobile line bonuses in play, or you get a mobile perks, or you have Hogan, Mr. T's a nightmare. Harper with his multi gems, he's just crazy. Button,
Harper's no matter what.
yeah. You want to talk about the MP guys, Button, the MP thieves?
Sure. So we're talking about people that are going to be problematic and hit you right away turn 1. So the only ways that you're going to avoid that is either beat them turn 1 so that they never get a turn, which may not be possible. You can do a submission turn 1. So I would highly recommend that you have at least one turn 1 submission guy in your feud lineup. And then the other alternative is having an MP thief. So someone like Six is someone that is very popular nowadays because he's a direct counter to purple, and there are a lot of very strong double purple users. Zombie Stone Cold is going to be the primary example on that. So if you don't have a way to really handle Zombie Stone Cold, then yeah, Zombie Stone Cold is going to be in a lot of feud lineups because when we get to powerhouses, spoiler alert, he's very good. So if you can't handle him any other way, then yeah, unfortunately, you need to stick Six into your lineup, because otherwise, yeah, you're not going to be able to beat Zombie Stone Cold, especially if he has a skip turn belt. The other guys, yeah, I mean, you have Hall and Nash. Nash steals red, Hall steals black. Is it? What color is Hall?
Yeah, Hall steals black.
Yeah. So again, those are going to be, depending on who you're facing. So with red, probably the most popular double red guy is going to be Andre the Giant. However, as we've mentioned in other programs, having someone like Andre the Giant, his submission isn't turn 1, so he doesn't fit that criteria, and his moves aren't turn 1, unless he has some type of row bonus, so he doesn't fit that criteria. And because he's a showboat, if you punch him really hard in the face, he's not going to be able to kick out. So Andre the Giant isn't bringing a lot to the party. So Nash will neutralize him, but I almost feel like you don't really need him for that. At that point, you're just kind of being a bully, because you could probably take him out just as easily with someone else that is turn 1. But yeah, depending on what line bonuses there are, you may have some people creep into lineups that aren't usually in there. So if you have a double red guy comes in, Nash is going to take care of him. Double black guy, Hall. So it just depends whether or not you have a submission guy in there. Personally, I like using a submission guy because he's going to be able to handle any turn one problem guys. I don't have to worry about having one specific guy for one specific color. If I have a turn one submission guy, he's going to be able to handle anyone regardless of color.
Yeah, that turn one submission guy or a stun guy helps neutralize the other turn one guys. And when you're feuding, make sure you're not using the same guy over and over, because you're getting a bonus for using unique guys. So that's part of why we're doing this list. It's part of why I do the feud prep video with the line bonuses to kind of break down who you could use, because using unique guys scores you a lot more points in feud. And also, we talk a lot about speed in feuding. And the reason for that is if you're feuding, look at when in the middle of the feud, there's a stat and a score button. You can hit it, and it'll show you how many points you've earned in that particular battle and how many points your opponent has earned. If you're consistently not getting more points than your opponent, you're feuding wrong, and you need to lower your lineup, stop using fodder, do something different. Making sure you're using all the correct trainers, because you need to be scoring more points than your opponent, or you're basically being negative help to your faction as far as its ranking. So pay attention to that, watch that. That's a really good indicator of how you're doing. Also, if your line mate's always waiting for you, you're too slow and your roster is too big. Fix it. In a nutshell. A couple guys. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was to follow up on that. I think that's probably the biggest mistake that I see people feuding. So they'll have a lineup. Let's say they'll have 7, 8 people in there, whatever, and they're all decent players. But let's say there's only 1 or 2 4-star golds in there, and the rest of them are either 4-star silver, bronze, or maybe even 3 stars to try to fill in line bonuses. So what ends up happening is that you get this high roster, and then you're matched against another high roster, but the only people that you can beat their guys with are your 2 highest guys. So another thing to look out for, and Mherex said you're doing it wrong. If you have a feud lineup, and instead of using every guy almost every feud, you're using 2 guys every feud, and the majority of your guys are just sitting there, you're also doing it wrong. So it's going to be much more advantageous to say use 5 guys and use every one of those 5 guys every feud, instead of having 8 guys and you're only using 2 guys, because again, you're getting a bonus for winning a match with a different person, and all those extra people is just more points that you're giving away. So I think in most situations, it's better to go in there maybe with 5 strong, 6 strong, something like that. Make sure that you have enough to where you can win a match with them. If you want to add 1 fodder, to get a line bonus, if it's actually going to help. I see a lot of people putting in fodders and getting a line bonus, but then the main guy in that line isn't even benefiting from it. So yeah, don't just fill your line bonuses in just because. If it's gonna help, yeah, go ahead and throw in 1 fodder, but really don't go above 1 fodder. That's kind of as far as you need to be. And as he was saying, if you're consistently taking longer, you're essentially what you're doing is you're costing your team points, because that other guy could be doing another feud and getting more points, but instead he's waiting on you. So that happens a lot of times where, let's say you'll be feuding and one person gets, I don't know, let's say 100,000 points in 10 minutes because they have 5-star golds, and they faced 7 opponents, but they were all 4-star silver or bronze, and it was super easy. So 10 minutes, 100K, easy. They could go on and do another one, but instead, the other guy has 8 people in their roster. They take 25 minutes, and maybe they end up with, I don't know, 150, 180K, something that looks solid if you're just like, oh, well, he scored 180, but you only scored 100. Yeah, but the thing is that it took him almost 3 times as long to get those points. And if you would have been feuding that whole time, you would have gotten even more points than that. So yeah, try really to look at what you're feuding with. Are you able to use all your people? But also pick your teammates responsibly. The closer that you guys are in rank, similarly, hopefully, you'll be able to take similar time in beating your guys. And yeah, the less time that you're waiting, the more time you're spent feuding. So yeah, really, really look into that. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making. Either their lineup is too big and their partner has to wait forever, or their lineup is too big and they're not using the people responsibly.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that too. Um, if you're consistently slow and slower than your faction mates, trust me, they all know. And when they see you queue, they'll like if you're like me and I'm queuing, I wait to see who pops in first. And if they're a way higher roster than me, I don't join them. And if they are someone I know feud slow, I certainly won't join them no matter what size their roster is. You definitely get known in your faction for that kind of stuff and not for a good way, and you frustrate a lot of people. So really work on that hard. Pay attention to that. Focus on that. Won't beat any more of a dead horse into it, but if you want to improve, if you want to get better at the game, the feuding portion of it, that's probably the biggest frustration for both me and the button here when feuding is slow feud partners, and for a lot of good feuders. So work on fixing that. We've been on strikers a while, so I'll just talk about a few more real quick. Booker T, if you have him, you know he's good. You don't need me to talk about him. Sid, no one probably has, or very few. He looks to be really solid. Steamboat with Sid's plate looks kind of interesting. Get a lot more of those power gems out and that kind of thing. So he looks interesting. NWO Brett, he can do some random reds, get out there on turn one, and then he's got his other builds too. For the women, Z Page has her stun. Rhonda's got some yellow destroy. They're probably better for feud than Trish by a good margin, but that's kind of about them. And the other ones is just to be aware that they can do things on turn one. Anyone else you want to call out before we move on to powerhouses?
I'd like to take one more moment to point out that in feud, Shamrock's black move, which doubles his black damage, and his green move, which puts random blacks on the board, are both going to be ready turn one. So just throwing that out there.
And that's without an MP coach or MP trainer, right?
Correct, because they're only 2 and 3. So I mean, without an MP coach, they're both ready to go.
So
So you could do something silly like put Titus and let's say Striker Nash on there, and that's what, like 6 extra gems or whatever. I don't even know how many.
yeah, 4 and 2, 6. Plus, if you
Yeah.
have the feud generation perk.
Yeah. So we're talking about double black striker damage and putting a bunch of random blacks on the board to begin with. And then you could also, if you put someone like, let's say you have Fiend to create more reds. Let's say you're facing someone that isn't turn one. You can use the black turn one, match a red gem, and then the match is over turn two. So Shamrock, very good in any situation.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty. So, question real quick. I haven't feuded with Shamrock. Have you ever hit the black move, hit the green move, filled up the black move again? So hit the black move and got a cascade and caught. 3 greens is not that crazy to catch, and then drop the green again, essentially using all 4. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, it's not very common because usually if you hit the green, you get the pin bar pretty close. But what will happen sometimes is, yeah, you'll use the black a couple of times, which if there's already a red match on the board, sometimes you have to play the, well, should I risk it? Because if I if I make some blacks, I may get to use the black again and increase, essentially tripling my striker damage now. and then do the choose move. But you run the risk of covering up the red. Um, but if there's a green, then yeah, you just use the green over and over again. So the green is cheap enough to where if you use that enough, you're also going to win. And then if you end up matching the red, you're for sure going to win. So yeah, lots of scenarios. Basically, the green will accidentally beat people, and then the red will for sure beat people.
Right on. Okay. We'll move on to powerhouses then. Much shorter list. This is kind of surprising, actually. So going through this, I was surprised at classes that had a bunch of turn 1 guys and a bunch that didn't. Changed it up a little bit on this one. With some of them, call them game changers turn 1. The big reason I didn't do that on strikers is strikers, a lot of the turn 1 choose guys would be game changers, but then you also had like Mr. T, Harper, Booker T, Shamrock, a lot of different categories. So this one I kind of had arranged it a little bit differently. But there is a lot of potential turn 1 guys, and go ahead and feel free to talk about whoever you would like to on this list to start button, and I will follow up.
So right away, let's just get it out there. Zombie Stone Cold. So he's gonna stun you turn 1. Every purple match is going to refill the stun if you filled up his MP perk. So yeah, I mean, you stun. If there's greens on the board, match a green. Try to get a yellow, then put more greens on the board. You can set up matches, and then depending on when the pin bar is, you set up 5 matches instead of doing a big cascade, and then do your 5 matches one by one, and then stun between your 5 matches. So you can very easily finish a turn if your pin bar was far enough and get off like 2 or 3 stuns to where by the time it's your turn again, you're looking at them being stunned for like 6 or 8 turns. And at that point, yeah, I mean, you have enough turns to pretty much do whatever you want. Zombie Stone Cold is very easily going to neutralize any of these other people. So the thing with him is if you're not used to using him, like if you don't really know what you're going to be doing, if you don't know where to put the gems to make the 5 matches, things like that, some people can be a little slow using him. But once you know what you're doing, once you know, okay, this is going to be enough to finish him, this is going to be enough to, turn him down, then yeah, he can be not the fastest guy, but a lot faster than, say, a submission guy. And he's going to easily neutralize someone turn 1. So, in terms of a turn 1 neutralizer, I think Zombie Stone Cold is the king, and all the other submission guys are, far below him. They still get the job done, but on a completely different level.
Yeah. Zombie Stone Cold, I used to use him all the time. A little too slow for me now. I rarely will put him in my feud roster, but that's because I have Kane with gear and now Quake with gear, and both of those two are certainly game changers on turn 1. Both incredible. Kane with gear is probably pretty rare, although there was just an event where if you push the button you could get it. So maybe you have it. He's super fun. Hogan is... Well, go ahead, button.
That button was on a very high shelf, though. Not a lot of people could reach that button.
Okay. Well, maybe you got it, maybe you didn't, maybe you had it before. Either way. Hogan, I'm not even going to talk about. You can just basically roll your face across the phone and win in feud, especially with how the line bonuses are for him. So you don't need us to talk about him. Macho looks to be insanely good as well. He's got a choose that's ready turn 1 that doesn't move the pin bar. So you can set your choose up, and it's his primary gem. So set your choose up to recycle your choose and keep choosing. And then you get wild cards so you can get extra turns and all that crazy stuff. So if you got Macho, you probably don't need us to talk about him either. You've probably watched a bunch of videos and you're going to use him. Although I think if I was going to tier rank these guys for feud, I would put Hogan at 1 and Quake just slightly below him at 1A. And then I'd probably go Macho, Kane with gear, and then Z Austin in that order. But, you know, it is what it is. Other guys on here, Z-Rock, pretty good once he get his high move damage and, you know, you're destroying his primary colors. You do need a bunch of reds on the board, so he can potentially fall victim to that. Goldberg is choosing a metric butt ton of reds, so he's pretty strong. I want to call out Shelton here with Big John Stud getting a 9K training ability. He generates more reds, but at 9K you start with 1 extra yellow MP. That makes Shelton turn 1 in feud to generate random reds. Once you fill those reds, you're blowing up the board with a bunch of blasts and recycling. So a lot of people have Shelton. If you have Shelton, get your Big John, and he's your best powerhouse. Get your Big John Stud up to 9K, and you'll do some serious damage with him. Button, anyone you want to talk about in particular on this list too?
Yeah, Shelton's another guy, like you said, that you'll look up and wonder what happened. How is it that half your life is gone after one turn? So really, really good advice on there. One guy that has a kind of interesting move set that isn't his most common move set is Vader. So Vader has 2 black moves that can both be ready turn 1. One of them is going to make additional row breaks, I believe it is, and then the other one is going to make random greens. And the goal there is you have a green move, which is a choose destroy. So basically, you're using 1 black to put the row breaks on there. You're using the other black to try to fill up your green, and then you use the green to either break the row breaks or try to fill up your blacks to try to create more greens to try to do everything all over again. So he's someone that, yeah, if you have a good board, he can really do some things. He's fairly easy to recycle. The advantage of this build is that it can be used turn 1, whereas his more traditional double green build is not going to be ready turn 1. So Vader, that's someone. I mean, depending on how you have your MP trainers distributed, so that's another thing when you're building your feud roster. You want to look at what guys are going to need which MP coaches, because yeah, if you have 5 great guys, but they all need Xavier Woods, that's not going to work. So if you don't have someone to put a black MP coach on, Vader is someone that can be viable and can do some things for you turn 1.
Right on. Um, I definitely want to talk about Phenom too. He can do a couple things. You can turn 1 sub him with the red sub, or you can steal purple with him too with a 2 MP. So he can be a turn 1 sub guy. He can steal purple, and once you start blowing up the board with him, you can do a lot of damage pretty fast. So he's a very solid guy to have in your feud lineup as a possibility. He's got the sub to neutralize on turn 1, and he can also steal purples with 2 MP. And it's a big purple steal. So it's like, I think it's 4, isn't it, at 4-star gold? 4 MP from each move for only 2 MP for him. It's 3 or 4. It's really good. So yeah, definitely Phenom. If you don't want a level 6, Phenom would be certainly another possibility, and he's probably a little bit stronger on his own potentially than Phenom without this, or than 6 without the steal. Although I don't know if that's necessarily true. But he's also a Taker, so if you're a Taker fan, you can use him. Do you want to talk about Z Charlotte with women at all? Since I know you have her at I think a pretty good level.
Yeah, I have her 4-star gold. She's another person. I think similar to Shelton that once she gets going, like everything feeds into each other. You got blast gems, you got yellow moves creating reds, you got yellow moves destroying gems. So that's going to destroy the blast gems. So yeah, with her, If you have a female feud, you have the option to use her red move, which on your first turn is going to put a bunch of random blast gems on the board. So pretty good way to get things started. Obviously, it's a little bit random, so it's not maybe as top tier as some of these other guys that we're talking about. But you can do a lot worse than having a powerhouse start with 6 blast gems on the board to start your match.
For sure, man. Hard to go wrong with the powerhouses and blowing up boards and doing big damage stuff. So, yeah. Drew has a really big bleed. It's a pretty big gamble because it's a really low chance to go off. Luger and Titus are on here because they do have choose botches that could go turn 1. Don't see that being necessarily viable. However, it could be kind of funny and annoying to do that to your opponent. Just throw out a bunch of botch gems turn 1. So I could see doing a little bit of trolling with that at one point just to be super annoying. But yeah.
Maybe not so much Titus, but Luger is someone that he has a place at 4-star gold. But yeah, he's someone like maybe similar to Andre, where you just put him in the lineup to be annoying, and you only do one match with him to get the bonus. But other than that, yeah, he shouldn't be your primary guy. But yeah, him putting a bunch of botch gems on the board turn 1 is going to make things difficult and annoying for your opponent.
So I think that pretty much covers the powerhouse guys. So I think we can move to tech now. So let's take a look at the techs here. Now this one, there is a surprising amount of guys at technician that could do stuff turn 1. Techs aren't always the highest gem damage. In fact, they're fairly low down on there. There are 2 really that stand above everyone else for feud, in my opinion. You got Tech Black, who is just gonna drop area gem after area gem, and you can basically pick whichever one you want to start with turn 1 with him. Also, when there's a bleed line bonus, he's got a very nasty bleed and can do a lot of stuff there. And Button, I will let you talk about Kofi.
So Kofi is extremely good. So much like Shamrock, he has a move which will keep increasing his primary color damage. Now, he's not a striker, so his green damage isn't as high as Shamrock's. But what he does have that Shamrock doesn't have is he has a 1-charge move which will put a bunch of greens on the board every time. So Shamrock is putting random blacks on the board, but you can't do it every turn because that would be hilarious. So, however, with Kofi, you can do it every turn, and it takes 1 or 2 turns for it to turn hilarious. So you could very easily get into situations where turn 2, you might have 20k green gems, and you're making like 6 random green gems every turn. And then you have your finisher, and the primary focus of your finisher should be to refill the blue. Basically, you're trying to use the blue over and over and over again. And really, most people aren't going to last longer than 2 or 3 turns against that if that blue's going off every turn.
Right on. So after those 2, which I don't happen to have any of those guys, so those don't make it. Yeah, I should have pressed the button. You're right. I do have Champa now, so he will probably be the tech I use the most for turn 1 stuff. And I have Wolfpack Sting. So Champa's got some crazy stuff he can do with silence gems. I think he's going to be a really good guy when you get silence bonuses, and also even when you don't. Wolfpack Sting can start with both purple moves, but you can also do a lot of cool stuff with Wolfpack Sting. So both of those are potentially really good feud guys. I do want to throw out here, if you look at the list here, Rizar at 9K makes a very big difference in the tech world. A lot of guys now become turn 1, and a lot more viable for feud in particular, because they'll get those blue moves that weren't off turn 1, and they'll get them off. So Bruno, both of his randoms will work, and then you go into his finisher. If you're lucky enough to have Z-Seth, you're gonna destroy all kinds of gems and do crazy stuff. Booker T becomes interesting again, as a turn 1 guy who can throw a ton of greens out there, get some mashes, and then go right into his finisher, which gets bonus from greens. So he's kind of interesting. But yeah, go ahead and talk about a couple of them here, Button.
So I have a soft spot in my heart for a couple of people that you have in the choose category. So Randall Orton is a national treasure. He is going to load both of his. He has 2 purple moves that are both going to be ready turn 1, and one's going to be choose green, and the other one's going to lay some botch gems. And then the finisher is going to be very strong. So you have a couple ways that you can use him. So you can use him as a speed guy. So similar to Sting, if you just put, I almost said Rezar. If you put Del Rio on him, you're going to create a lot of extra green gems and win probably turn 1. If you can't win turn 1, you can choose to up the green damage, and you just need enough gems to fill the finisher. So instead of creating a huge cascade, maybe you try to create 2 green matches, just enough to fill your finisher, but maybe not necessarily enough to cause a pin. And then use the second purple gem and use now a buff green damage for your finisher, and then you can get a lot of wins that way that you couldn't with just the choose green. So yeah, Orton is going to be someone that's very strong, very useful, especially for feud, because like I said, every purple match he's ready turn 1, and every purple match he's ready to do it all over again. Another guy that was very strong at 3-star and then is now completely forgotten in your realm, apparently altogether, is Alberto Del Rio. So he has a choose blue move, which loads his blue, which is choose green, which loads a submission. So again, he can be used for speed. So blue isn't his primary color, but if you're talking about knocking out, lower level guys, yeah, that's going to get it done. If they kick out of that, then you have a blue move to now choose green. So now you are choosing in your strongest color. And if your opponent has the audacity to still be around, well, then you put the submission on them, bring them all down, and then hopefully somewhere in the process, you've either gotten a cascade or a purple match to get the whole thing started over again. So yeah, he's not top tier, but he's a lot of fun to use. And if you don't know that that's coming and you just let him go off turn 1, know that he's going off turn 2, and know that turn 3, all your MP is going away. So very easy for things to get out of hand with Alberto Del Rio. I don't see how you guys let that happen. I'm really disappointed in this realm, to be honest with you.
I don't really know either. But part of what you're saying about Rizar, you could also go out of your way to make sure you do not cause a pin with that first one, because you're choosing his choose number is quite high, actually. I'm looking at him at 4-star bronze here, and his choose numbers are like choose 5 at 4-star bronze, which is pretty dang high. So you could use your purple move, choose your blues, not cause a pin, get a couple 3 matches is all, and then still turn 1. Now you're choosing your primary color. And you could probably do some work. You could also, while you were choosing the blues, set up a couple blue matches to refill the blue after you break the green too. So you could probably have that choose green ready to go again. If you did that properly, actually. So he looks like he's on one of those guys where once I start having to look for a guy again, which I'm almost there again for techs, if I don't get someone new, now that I have Bruno and Champa at 4-star gold, Rezer might be a guy I take to 4-star gold just because you can do a lot with him. Maybe Mr. Perfect because I really like Perfect as a wrestler. I grew up watching him, so he'd be the probably down to those two for who I might do next. But yeah, definitely a super interesting guy, and I think very usable. Especially, factor in Bruno as a coach too. If anyone, he's solid for sure. Who else do I want to talk about?
I know who I want you to talk about, but you're not going to do it, so I'm going to have to.
I actually want to talk about the worst technician in the game that everyone loves. I'm going to talk about the stupid clown because I know that's who I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
I hate him because he's a clown, so that automatically makes him not good because he's a clown. But Doink can do a lot of things. He's also got a sub. He can 6 MP blue sub, so you can have that ready to go turn 1 and slow people down. And I think at this point, y'all know what Doink brings to the table, recycling, the purples and greens and all that. But the sub move is really interesting, and I'll actually let you talk about it further because I'm actually not feeling too well talking about him, so screw the clown.
That's fair. So he has a blue submission. I believe you get that at 4-star. And yeah, it's ready to go turn 1. So we've been talking this whole time about all these turn 1 guys and how you need a solution for them. And we said the solutions are either Zombie Stone Cold, an MP Thief, or more broad, a submission guy. So having a turn 1 submission in feud, depending on what people are available, if you have a feud where you can only use a tech, yeah, suddenly having Doik in there and having him be your submission guy that feud becomes very useful. He has another blue move, which I believe creates random purple. And then I believe he has a purple move, which is Choose Destroy, which you can use to refill your moves, refill the submissions. Yeah, he's not going to be slow, but like I said, if you're building your lineup correctly, most of these guys you're only using 1 turn. So your sub guy shouldn't be your primary attacker, but everyone does need a turn 1 sub guy in their lineup. So if Doink is who you have leveled because you like him for his recycling build, depending on what else you got going on, if you don't have a submission guy you can put into your feud lineup, he has that added versatility where now you can have someone else be your primary attacker, and Doink turns into a utility guy with the sub.
Yeah, I'll allow it, I suppose. There are a lot worse things you could do. We already talked about Angle a little bit. Jake the Snake's got a turn 1 bleed. He particularly has been very good with bleed line bonuses. Bleed into a sub that leaves multi-gems, so it makes the recycling a little bit easier. So Snake might be a solid mid, like if you want a legendary guy and you don't have Bruno, Snake is pretty solid. And you can do some stuff on turn 1. I do think with Rizar getting the 9k ability, it does bring a little bit back to Stardust's luster, actually. It shines him up a little bit, if you will, because he has both the random and the choose ready turn 1. So you could throw that random out and then do a lot of connection with the choose. So if you're an older player and have Stardust, I don't. Maybe he's somebody with a 9k Rezer that, you maybe took him to 4-star bronze and regretted it at the time, but he could potentially be usable for you again. Other than that, Jay is interesting, really low charge moves. You can do a lot of stuff with him, but I just don't think the damage is there. And Gargano, no one has him, because no one has him. If you have him, again, you probably don't need us to talk about him. He looks pretty solid. I think DDP's just not quite good enough. A little too slow. If you're going to use him, make sure you have 9K Z-Cane for the extra X breaks and the damage. Anything else you want to call out on the text before we move on?
No, I mean, there's some MP thieves in there, but I don't think we need to go over MP thieves too much. You guys get the point there. One guy that we didn't mention is Hitman. So if you have Bret Hart's gear, he's gonna create some extra green gems. He's a botch gem guy. So again, there's a place for that. Feud may not necessarily be the best place for that. So Showdown, we've talked about how getting cheap, easy wins with protect gems, stuff like that, is very helpful. In Feud, one of the points that you get is for the amount of health that you take away. So it's better to win the whole match and get the pin as opposed to get a cheap like 30k win turn one. Yeah, you'll get the points for it, but you're gonna miss out on a lot of points. So if he's your primary feud guy, you're really missing out on a lot of potential points there. So he's good, someone to have. He's versatile. He's useful in a lot of other situations. So maybe someone that if you wanted to use him in one of your slots, that'd be fine, but not necessarily your primary guy. And then yeah, I mean with the other ones, the ladies, they're basically annoying. Asuka is annoying. Becky is extremely annoying. She's flooding the board with silence gems. And then Lita's solid. I mean, if you use her intelligently, she recycles pretty well. She pretty hard. She was kind of like the first non-submission female, so
Mm-hmm.
you know hits a little bit harder than maybe some of the submission females. But yeah, I mean they're all as you mentioned, most women are kind of on par. I would say Asuka and Becky are different because they're slow and annoying, and I personally wouldn't want to use them. But if for some reason that's what you like, sure, but don't make them your primary feuder, please.
Yeah. If you do, I don't want to feud with you. Um, yeah, I think that pretty much covers the text. Um, Samoa Joe, Green MP Thief, can do a lot, so he's certainly viable. He's coming up as a reward in this coming week's Blitz if your faction maxes it as a 4-star, so a 4-star bronze. So that makes him a lot more interesting. He's a guy I wouldn't mind having up if you have Gallows in particular. Samoa Joe is fairly nasty. So you might look into Samoa Joe a little bit more. I might have to make a video on him since he's going to be the reward actually this coming week or the week after. Let's move on to Tricksters. Again, a lot of Tricksters in this list ready turn one. A lot of them do interesting things. I think Trickster has the most MP Thieves. It has the most turn one sub guys. It has the most women turn one in the list. Not a lot of choose guys, and not a lot of what I would call game changers necessarily for feud. But there's some really cool stuff here. So Hollywood and Macho, neither of us have either of them. They're both really, really good. Really, really good. If you have them, you don't need us to tell you about them. You're going to level them and use them. So, there. Tough. We've made a whole episode talking about how Tough sucks. So yeah, he's got to choose, but meh, not that exciting.
Yeah, I mean you're not going to win with that shoes. I mean you're going to do some damage and you're probably going to win the match, but he's probably going to get hurt pretty bad. So
yeah.
maybe you get one more match out of him, but if he's your primary guy, he's going to fizzle out pretty quickly.
Yeah, don't use him as a primary. Use him as like if you have him 4-star gold to pick on 4-star silvers. That's a pretty good use for Tough. He will do it quickly enough, So
not as well as Sting though.
No, Definitely not as well as Sting. Eddie is new. A lot of people don't have him. He's got to choose purple and is kind of the Terminator. He heals like crazy and has got a bunch of MP steals. So Eddie can do a lot. If you have him, you're probably an Eddie mark because you had to do a fair amount to get him. So you're probably leveling him anyway. So we'll
Let me
go
let
ahead.
me ask you something. So, you mentioned there's a lot of people on here. I'm looking at this, and realistically, so not Hollywood and not Macho. Realistically, I would say the two people. There's only one person on this list that I ever use in feud, and that is Edge. So Edge is usually my go-to turn one submission guy. Uh, you could also use Deadman, I believe, also turn one submission. Is that correct?
Yep.
So both of those guys are going to be very useful, but everyone else is kind of like meh. So we talked about how Trickster is a utility class. So they have a lot of good uses as trainers, but for feud, I don't really see them as being someone that you really want to focus on unless you have a really good line bonus. So if you have, we had a feud recently where you had a bleed bonus. So someone like Zombie Brock would be very hard. Trickster Rock would also be very strong.
Is
You have,
Texture a new class?
uh, I've said too much. I apologize.
So is that like wrestlers that got their start in Texas or
No, so it's actually part of the 9-star release. But again, I'm not at liberty to talk about that in this dimension.
fine? I'll let it slide this time. Watch
So,
yourself.
but yeah, I mean, looking at this list, so besides Edge, Deadman, and maybe some line bonuses that would help someone like Rock or someone like Zombie Brock. I mean, we've talked about how sub guys are more useful than MP Steel guys in feud because they work on everyone. Is there anyone really on this list that you would use consistently? I mean,
Um,
Andre only exists in mythical texts. Gallows is good, so I'll give you that. So really, we're talking about, honestly, I think Flair maybe is the next person that excites me.
I
How
think
do you see this class?
so. Not my favorite feuding class for sure. I think Gallows would probably be in there because shoes in the column. I'll probably get to his his trap gems fairly soon. Maybe recycle the blue move fairly easily. So he's kind of interesting, like you said, and he's pretty nasty when he goes off. Edge is kind of, if you don't have the top two guys, Edge is your guy if you have him. I mean, that's the guy to use. And for a sub guy, he's pretty fast and he can heal himself too. Zombie Cena is still kind of rare. I'll talk about him anyway because he's my current project and I think he looks really fun. So the bite there, steal up to 32,188 health. That's a turn one with green, but that's not how I'd run him. Let's see if I have it kind of set up. With Rock, it's 56k. Anyway, he's not really set necessarily to go off turn one because you would use him and go for a yellow match and get those trap gems down, or potentially, you run steal on him and make a bunch of randoms. But you get those trap gems down, and at 4-star gold, each one gives you 2 green MP. So ideally, you get the trap gems down, and then you just start recycling like crazy and stealing, 56k health every turn. So a little probably too slow to be great at feud. However, if someone doesn't have a turn one guy, I plan on using him a bunch in feud because of that recycling with that moveset. The non-stun set actually, is how I would use him. Because I don't have the gear, and the gear adds a lot more damage to the sunset. But he looks really fun to me. But maybe not fast enough to be a great feuder. Razor with the sub into the trap gems, into the finisher, I think could potentially be fairly fast. Probably faster than Deadman for sure. Not probably as fast as Edge, but still really good. But yeah, I think you might be right. There's not a lot of guys here that I would use other than utility, like to steal a certain color or to slow them down. So Flare would come in there because, like Steph, he can get going pretty fast. So I think they're basically carbon copies of each other. So I think you're probably right there. There's not a lot to love necessarily in the tricksters for feuding, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's not to love a lot there for tricksters for feuding, and then we had an entire episode about how we like pretty much all of these guys more than Tough. So that kind of puts it a little bit more in the context where Tough is starting to end up in the grand scheme of things, at least as far as we're concerned. Honestly, right. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Our opinion is that he's poopy.
Right, and if you disagree, that's fine. You're just wrong. Do you want to save me from that? Anything to add about that line, or should I move on to the females?
I purposely let that be completely on you.
That's fine. I'll take full liability and responsibility. If you love Tough, you're wrong. I'm sorry. Anyway.
I can't deal with that kind of cross-dimensional heat.
That's fine. I'll be a heel today. Normally, I have a really good heel guest, but we went with the button to appease the people. So hopefully having you on the show will generate some positive for me and make up for all the heat I'm sure to get. So
that would have worked. The problem is that no one is going to be listening at this point.
You're right. We're
all the goodwill that I am building for you, it's not really going to be built. But on the positive, I mean, no one's going to hear you bash Tough. So the Tough lovers, they're not going to get upset about it.
I mean,
so it's kind of win-win.
Yeah, if you love Tough, you probably quit watching after the first episode if you love Tough, to be real.
Yeah.
The women are kind of a lot more interesting, actually. Steph is super fun. I like playing her. Z Sasha, I've talked about before. I like her moveset. She shuffles. Natty, I know you kind of like as a sleeper. And Nikki's basically Mr. Perfect. And Kyrie doesn't exist for normal humans like us.
Yeah. So level your tricksters because they're useful, but don't use them to feud.
Yeah, unless you have Hollywood or Macho, you're probably not going to be blown away feuding by any trickster. Although that's probably the class you'll pick your turn 1 sub guy, Edge, Razor, Deadman kind of thing. Moving on then to Acros. Much shorter list. Much shorter list. And I think a very big difference between the top and the next spot down. With Acro. I think for a lot of people, this month is a very important chase month. If you can get Acro Triple H, I think you need to do it unless you have some of those rare guys you're looking at the top of the list. Because he's going to be probably the best Acro on your team unless you got one of those super rare guys. So, I'm all in on him. I would blow all my resources this month to get him. I have Andrade, and I think the new Triple H is going to be better than him. I just don't see any way he's not, because he's so fast and he does so much damage, and he's going to recycle. Neither of us have Z-Taker. I don't think we really need to talk about him. I think he is the cream of the crop. Ray, if you have both gears, is insane. If you don't, maybe moves down a little bit because the damage isn't super hot. Rico, if you got him, you've leveled him and you're using him. You don't need us to talk to you about him. Who would you like to talk about this for this list there, Button?
So a guy that I really like on this list is Stinger. So Stinger, both of his green memes, green moves are going to be ready to use turn one. So you're gonna make a area of, what are those things called? They
Uh,
change gem something.
color turn gem.
Color turn gems. Yes,
Yeah.
he's gonna make an area of color turn gems, and then he's going to make color turn gems into blue. Um, Especially nice if you have his gear. So his gear is going to make extra blues. So you could run him a couple ways. You could just go for maximum destruction turn one, by putting NXT Rollins on him to make even more blues. So you're talking about easily double digit blues in a small area. So they're not random across the board. They're random in a small, like 6x6 area. So you're going to do a lot of damage there. Or you can choose to extend the submission. So he's going to have a sub that gets filled with that. You can make that sub go longer. You can make that sub do more damage. There's a couple ways you can run him. So he, much like Striker Sting, is someone that is going to be able to hit very quickly and can knock out those people that are lower than him pretty fast. So someone that's useful to have. So we mentioned, in addition to have someone that's a turn one neutralizer, you want to make sure to have a couple of turn one guys on your team. So Acro Sting is someone that I'm very high on, especially if you have the gear.
Yeah, with the gear and NXT Seth, you're turning what, 13 gems to blue in that area of 25. So if you got a couple, 3 blue gems in that area that you're choosing, all of a sudden you're connecting a lot of dots there.
Now,
Also,
you want to try to choose an area where you have the most blue gems already, because it's not going to turn the blue gems because they're already blue. So the more blue gems you have in it, the less gems that can potentially turn blue, and then the higher damage that you're going to end up doing.
plus, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Sting drinks Big Red because it's delicious.
Yes, Sting has a mouth, therefore he should drink Big Red. That's
Indeed.
how that works.
Yeah, and he does. No, I agree with you. Sting's actually pretty interesting when a lot of acros aren't. Plus, I'm not going to lie, I love his gear. It looks super cool. Certainly a guy you could consider if you're lacking the game changers. I really wish I had Macho. Really wish I had Macho. He's my unicorn. I've wanted him forever, not been able to get him forever. I think he would be fun for sure. Who else? I don't like acros, so the list for me we've about covered. Eddie's got a turn one sub, doesn't lose a lot, fills up really easy. He's just slow, but he's dang good. AJ's another turn one potential sub guy. Tozawa, sneaky Tozawa, can do 2 different sets of stealing, but I don't know that he's necessarily great. Women,
Tozawa could be a lot better if he spent more time focusing on his wrestling and less time focusing on his ninja training.
I will say I was really impressed by his ninja training. I felt like I was watching a Bruce Lee movie for a while.
Yep.
Um,
But very, very sneaky.
he is sneaky. I love Bailey. She's my favorite woman. So, she was free. If you have Bailey, you have extra resources for acro, then level her up. Otherwise, women, I don't believe if you worth the resources, use the free ones when they come along. So hopefully you took Bailey up there. But if you have extra acro and you didn't take her up, she's worth it.
Yeah, I would say one person that you kind of glazed over is Triple H. So you mentioned he's really good, but I think that the way that he should be played hasn't really been highlighted too much. So I've seen people, they mention, the choose build and recycling, and people mention, the double purple, but I think that people don't realize that if you use the double purple correctly, you can blow up all of those column break gems. Because even though you're only picking 3, if you just match that with another random blue that's on there, you blow up a row. And then if you just make sure that you put all your column breaks on the row that you're blowing up, yeah, that's turn 1, blow up the board, probably refill all your moves. He works very similar to X-Pac in that regard. So how do you feel about Triple H?
Uh, I think other than Z Taker and maybe Ray with all of his gear, I think he's going to be the best acro other than them. I'm sure Rico users will disagree. Ricochet users will disagree with me a little bit there. But yeah, and so the thing with him is you only need 6 purple gems on the board to recycle that move next turn if they manage to live. 6 is not very many, and especially not very many if you use those MP, or not MP, but the extra gem coaches we've talked about so much. I believe Zombie Sasha is extra purple, 25% chance. So if you have
Zombie Sasha is actually
yellow.
yellow. Zombie is purple.
Okay, Zombie Charlotte then. So I have her at 9K. She'll be going on my Triple H. And then Andrade also does purple, so you could use either one of those two. And then if you have Drew for the extra column, then you literally blow the whole board up. If you don't have Drew, that's fine. You're still blowing 6 rows up. Crazy good. With Drew, I should give a caveat. With Drew, I think he's better than Rico, Andrade, or Ray without gear or 1 set of gear. Probably not better than Ray with 2 sets. Z Taker's going to be better, but without Drew, I think he's comparable to Ricochet and Andrade. Super good. He'll probably be the best acro you get. Acro is really thin for feud, and he's going to be a superstar at it, so I think 100% go for him. As much as you can, he's going to be worth it.
So I mentioned that he plays very similar to X-Pac, and you talked about how great Triple H acro is. Tell me, Mherex, how you feel about X-Pac?
Dude, X-Pac sucks. Why are we even talking about him?
So I will say that X-Pac can be turn 1. So if you use the black move to fill your blues, then, if you got Kofi on there, acro Kofi, you can break extra blues. So if you have enough blues on the board, yeah, you can fill your moves up and, cause destruction early. The problem is that he doesn't recycle nearly as well as his purple build. So double blue purple instead of double blue black. So I personally would rather use him with the purple move as a turn 2 guy instead of using him as a turn 1 guy, because I think, yeah, if you're using him turn 1, I think it's a little bit more difficult for him to refill, and I think refilling is really important for him, especially with acro gem damage, where Triple H is gonna really outshine him is that he's putting multiply gems out there, and he's doing more column breaks than he does. So yeah, for sure, Triple H is a better version of X-Pac. X-Pac is very good, but I personally don't think that the black move is the best way to use him. That being said, I also don't think he's worth using 2 MP trainers on to try to get him there fast. I think with 2 MP trainers, he's ready to go turn 2 no matter what. I think if you are in a situation where you need to use X-Pac, I would probably rather do blue MP coach. I'd either do gem damage, someone like Flare or Acro Macho to increase your blue gem damage, and then maybe someone like Zombie Charlotte, or if you don't want to do the gem damage, you can also put Trickster Taker on there. And it gives you like up to 75% chance of extra purple gems.
Yeah.
So match the purple turn one and then let him do his thing for the rest of the turns. I think that's probably a better way to use him. But again, it's going to depend on what your other options are.
My main
So
my main issue with X-Pac is at 4-star gold against other 4-star golds, you're probably going to have to cycle his moves 3 times, and you're going to take heavy damage if you live. And I'm not okay with using 2 MP trainers on pretty much anyone. They'd have to like be turn 1 win guarantee for me to be willing to do that. So those are my main issues with X-Pac. Triple H, if you have Drew, you're basically almost doing double the damage turn 1 of X-Pac, and then turn 2 you have the multiply gems down, so you're way more than doubling it, and you're finishing the match turn 2 if you don't finish it turn 1. So that's my big thing why Triple H is so much better, and part of why I hate on X-Pac is because at 4-star gold he just doesn't put people away. He takes too much damage. So like the button was saying, either turn to him or maybe just do the blue move set and pick on a 4-star silver with him that you can put out really quickly. Use him as one of your guys to take out a 4-star silver guy quickly. But yeah, I think that's about what I got on Acros. AJ isn't what he used to be at the 3-star gold level, so I'm not super hyped about AJ, but he's got a turn 1 sub. So.
and now showboats.
Okay, to finish off with the best feuding class there is.
The thoughts of Mherex do not necessarily represent those of the button.
Fair enough. Really short list. Fiend.
So let's do a similar exercise.
Okay, go ahead.
Before going through all of these guys, so Fiend, definitely someone that you can feud with. Turn 1 sub, and not only turn 1 sub, extremely high damage sub because of the bleed. The bleed's going off with the sub. Yeah, I mean, you're doing 150k plus depending on how many times you've stacked the bleed on there. So for sure usable. Dango, I'm not even gonna ask what you think about him. I mean, I know you think he's the solution to all of life's problems. But I will say, yeah, I mean, with his moveset, I'll let you talk about his moveset a little bit more. It does actually fit a lot of the criteria that we've been talking about for feuding. So he's going to have some things ready to go turn 1. I think if you're smart about it, you can even get like almost all his moves off.
You can get to the finisher turn 1. I did it a bunch this feud with this moveset.
Yeah, so go ahead, and I'll let you talk about it before going on. Get your Dango lust out.
Okay, well, I am a bit of a Dango fan, so I'll pull him up to show you guys the moves, because I don't think it's commonly known you can get to his finisher turn 1, so that's not the moves you want. You're going to put this one right here, this red in, and this purple. So with perks and woods, you're going to start with the purple full and the red full. So you choose where you want to put your protect gems down, and then you make those into yellow. And the finisher's only 10 MP. So you get to his finisher and put out those 4 rows using, I used Woods and Honky Tonk Man to further reduce gem damage, and it was super effective. Now, it doesn't recycle super amazing. However, this is only a 3 MP move, so when you're putting out your protect gems, if you do like a row break in a 3 match, that'll pretty much fill you up, your finisher up, and if you have the row break hit a red gem or 2, you're going to be ready to pop it again. So if your finisher doesn't put them away, you can turn a bunch of protects into yellow and hopefully get close to it again. So Dango is really good this way. It's pretty cool. It was fun to be able to use him turn 1, and this should be available every feud with the MP perk. So definitely, to me, puts him in that category for showboats as being a feuding game changer if you've built him right and leveled him up, and all that good stuff. So yeah, I love Fandango for feud now too. He's the man.
Yeah, I mean, Dango basically he's choose yellow, except that it doesn't say choose yellow anywhere on his card. He's he's taking ninja lessons from Tozawa in the realm of sneakiness.
He really is. You got to watch. I mean, he. The more I use him, the more I play him, I really think he might be the most underrated guy in the entire game. Like he literally can do it all. He's amazing.
He is really good. I will agree with everything you say, except that you and I think a lot of people really beat the Dango drum. Um, Poor Ken Shamrock. No one talks about him that way.
Well, I mean, have you seen Dango's fashion police outfit? It's amazing. Shamrock's wearing like some kind of weird red thing. I don't even know what it is.
Sure.
Okay. So Fiend's awesome, Dango's awesome, and then we have everyone else. So go ahead and take your pick. Wow me.
Um. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about trying to do a lot of damage quickly or neutralize your opponent. So Showboat isn't going to be a good class to try to do a lot of damage quickly. Um, your best bets are probably going to be these choose guys. So Piper, you're going to be able to use the one move to refill your choose yellow and then use your choose yellow to up your yellow damage. So really the second go around is when you're going to be doing a lot more damage. So usable, solid, easy to refill. But again, he needs a refill to really start doing damage. Rude, you can do some interesting things with those fortified gems, but it requires getting used to using that, knowing how you want to place them. Um, I guess what Rick is turn one sub, but we've talked about how he's got a touch of the clunky to him.
Yeah, you need the right line bonus for Slick, like this last one, where you use the sub turn one and then turn two you're able to go off, but that doesn't happen super often. So, but yeah, when he's got the right line bonus, then he's amazing. When he doesn't, he's clunky to me.
Yeah, I will say, I am starting to realize now why maybe you might think Showboat is the best class, because another guy that's actually pretty good, in the worlds of Showboat is another Mherex fanboy target. I'm gonna let you talk about Mankind.
Ooh, absolutely. So if you watched my feud live stream, I actually put Mankind in for a while, just to show people. He is a lot better than you think. He's not incredible because of the gem damage and it being his off color, but 7 MP black moves, you're choosing 6 and you make 6 random blues. So I happen to have Hall of Fame Sting because I got super lucky from the faction vault. So I was making 11 randoms and then I had the gem generation perk. So I was making 13 randoms into blues and then choosing 13. 140, 150k plus, no problem. You only need to make one black match happen to recycle it. So went pretty well. Anyone not turn one, he's fine to pick on, like strikers that aren't turn one, because you get the bonus, the class advantage, and they have a little bit lower hit points. So play for the recycle and you beat them your second turn before they can go off, and it's really fun and funny. Anyone 4-star silver and under, pretty much he beats up on, and he's fast and it's funny. So I know there had to be someone when I had him in my feud lineup that went in there like, oh, Mankind, I'm gonna use my crappy guy on him, and then just got rocked. So because even the AI can't screw up 26 blue gems.
Sorry.
No, yeah. So
I thought you were done, but then I forgot you were talking about Mankind, so I'm going to give you another 15 more minutes.
Okay, excellent. So just really fun. kind of like Payroll does with Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle's his favorite, and then he's found a way to make him work and win with him and be pretty good. Same thing with Mankind. If I pick my spots, he'll win all day. He'll win fast, and I'll have fun with it. And that's why I tell people, pick one guy you want to level that's just for you. Have other guys in that class that are good before you do it, but then have fun with the guy. There's no reason not to do that. Anyway, back to your original programming.
So one guy, so here's where we redeem ourselves. I want you to put a spotlight on why Brutus Beefcake is sneaky good in Feud. Go. Come on, you can do it.
So he's got this thing where he makes 2 rows into heal gems, and then he's got this other thing, I think, at 4-star that I don't have unlocked yet, the running clothesline where he turns those into yellow gems, and I'm pretty sure he can do that turn 1 right into his submission. So you got a turn 1 sub guy and you broke a bunch of yellow gems, so he's definitely usable. Recycle might be a little bit difficult, but it's only a 7, so you just need a black match. And he does have the change the power gems into heal gems, and that's only 2 MP, so he potentially can do some things against some of the power gem guys. And honestly, at one point I was down to trying to choose between Brutus to take up or Mankind, and Mankind won because I'm a mark. But Brutus kit was very interesting to me. It's still interesting, just because I think it would surprise people.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of lost respect for Brutus when he was having that disagreement with Shawn Michaels, and then he tried to escape through the barbershop window. I thought that was very cowardly of him, and I've just never thought the same of him since.
Wasn't it Marty Jannetty that went through the window?
No, it was Brutus Beefcake. Wait, is that not how it went in this dimension? This dimension really is the worst. Like, I don't see how you guys even watch wrestling here.
Why do I have you on this show?
I mean, where else are you going to get wrestling information from other timelines?
Valid.
So, is there anyone else really here that you would use? I mean, we mentioned obviously the top guys. Yeah, if you want to use them, go ahead. And again, really, all of this we're talking about use, but really we mean use him for one guy, because what you should be doing is using someone one time every feud, and then using someone else, and then when you're out of people, you should be done feuding. I mean, maybe you're going to get into a situation where you use 5 and you go up against someone that puts 7 under-leveled people in there. So remember, we said earlier, don't do that. So if you're built well and you run into that, that's just a ton of easy points for you. So that's another reason why you should set up like we're recommending. You know, let's say you have 5-star golds and you go up against a team that has 9 people, and half of them are 4-star silver, 2 of them are 4-star bronze, and then 3 of them are 3 stars. Like, it's going to be a joke. So at that point, use all of your guys once, and then use your fastest guy or someone that's getting a feud multiplier to clean up the rest of the chumps and laugh all the way home. So, yeah, I mean, that's, if you're using your feud guys correctly, you're probably not going to be overusing them, and you should have one speed guy to really clean up the smaller guys if you do end up with a lot of extra people.
Yeah, I think Fiend and Dango are the cream of the crop. Then I think Piper is very solid. Hall of Fame Sting, which no one has, is very good. NWO Big Show, who almost no one has, is pretty dang good. The new Warrior is going to be a pretty solid feuder, I think, so I'd put him there, and Duggan. And then probably Rude as well. After that, you know, you jump down kind of a tier. So Slick is fine if you load him. You're gonna boom and win, so that's fine. Z-Kane could be super annoying with the defensive build. You can run 2 MP trainers and get a skip on there, but that's a pretty hefty. By 2 I mean your primary Acom and then a dual MP guy. After that, it's just we've talked about most of them. Godfather's gonna be his good move isn't turn 1, so he's gonna be a little slower. Cena has a turn 1 sub, and he's got a choose move.
Build your Cenas, everyone.
No, that's not what we're saying. Rikishi and Dusty have MP steal, but Dusty steals green, and it's not very good. Rikishi steals yellow, but again, not the greatest guy. So I think for as far as the men go, we've covered most of it. Like Duggan's pretty solid too. He can do some good stuff for you. But mostly in feud, Showboat is not the most exciting class either. So really, I think as we kind of look at how this went, it was strikers and powerhouses pretty much feud with. They're really good. And then everyone else has 1 or 2 guys in that class, and then everything else. So, pick your striker and your powerhouse wisely, and then maybe use some of your niche guys at the other ones unless you happen to have the top tier one. But, maybe use a turn 1 sub guy at Trickster. Maybe at Acro, you use like Eddie or something, or have an MP guy at Trickster. Get creative with it, but set up your rosters to win with that guy. Use class advantages, get faster, get better, learn, don't have big rosters. The women here, I know you love Paige with gear. Bree, no one cares about because she's Hall of Fame and no one spent for her. Sasha with gear is really good, so she would be fine to use as well.
Yeah, I mean, Paige with gear is kind of funny in feuds because you can get into situations where literally all of her moves are ready turn 1. So it's, again, would be a primary. Well, I say that, but a lot of people don't level up their women. So what I found is that when we do a women's feud, usually I can have maybe 1 or 2 golds and maybe throw in Paige in there at 4-star silver, and you end up going against 4-star silvers and 4-star bronzes and maybe even a couple of 3 stars. Like, there aren't a lot of 4-star gold women out there. So if you have someone like a Paige that can go off turn 1, Charlotte that's gonna make a Stephanie that's gonna make a ton of purple gems turn 1, a Bailey who's just going to be a destroyer of worlds turn 1. Yeah, I mean, if you make the investment into women at gold, you can make women's feuds very easy. The problem is that women's feuds don't come along very often, so they're not a great use of your resources. Hopefully you use these events where we got some really good women to get them up to gold for free. And if you did, have fun using them.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think, so honestly, Button, I think I've gotten along better with you than most of my previous guests. I hope people that have watched the previous show still enjoyed this one without me fighting with you the whole time.
They
Go ahead.
I said they didn't. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're right. They probably didn't. I don't think I have anything really big in closing this segment. We talked a lot about how to feud. We talked about a lot of guys. This is a pretty long podcast at this point. I do want to reiterate one of the things that I said, but we'll probably get there. Feuding, I like fast guys. I like turn 1 guys. I like heavy damage turn 1. If I can put you away turn 1 and be done, that's ideal. Although those guys are pretty rare. So if you have one, build them up. If you don't have one, look for one. Have a couple turn 1 guys, so some free ones. What did we say? Striker was going to be Striker Sting, a free one that you guys all have. Powerhouse. Goldberg is pretty good turn 1. A lot of you would have Shelton with 9k Big John Stud. Can sneak up on a lot of people now with Big John Stud at 9k. Tech. Other than
Orton's probably going to be the one that most people have.
Yeah, Orton, I would say most of you would probably have. Yeah, and Doink. Orton and Doink probably would be the two.
And I think people are hopefully realize that Del Rio is still pretty good. I know a lot of people at 4-star. It's very common to hear, oh, Stardust got nerfed. Del Rio's not as good as he used to be. Yeah, I mean they're not winning turn 1, but that doesn't mean that they're not. So
right.
If that's who you like, especially for feud, having a guy that's going to do a lot of damage turn 1 is extremely useful.
Yep. I will toss out Samoa Joe since some people are going to be getting him 4-star bronze with the green MP. If you have Gallows, you might consider Samoa Joe as a second or third tech, potentially. Trickster, we kind of discussed, fairly weak. Edge is probably one of your better options. Deadman. Or
Edge and Deadman.
Yeah.
It for me.
And then Razor is a good option too, but he's still very rare. Trick Rock would be a good one, also rare though. So yeah, I would say probably Edge and Deadman most likely for you. Acro, oof. Stinger is probably one of the not as rare, better ones, and he's still kind of rare. Stinger, X-Pac, Eddie would be your non, like insanely rare ones to go with. And Showboat we were just on, so I don't know that we need to recap that, but it's probably so yeah. I like fast guys for feuding, and I like choose move guys a lot too, area guys, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that's about my thoughts on feud.
So overall, like I said, a lot of information. Hopefully people can take that all in and make better feuding decisions moving forward. Again, I'd like to reiterate, getting 100,000 points in 10 minutes 3 times is a lot better than getting 200,000 points in 30 minutes. So feud fast. If you're having to wait on someone, then try to pick someone that's a little bit closer to you in talent level. I also do the same thing that Mherex mentioned about waiting for a guy and then joining. I wasn't going to put that out there, but as long as we're airing dirty laundry, okay, there we are. But yeah, I mean, try to feud smarter, and overall, it'll make feuding a lot easier for you. Unfortunately, if you're doing some of these things, what may happen is that you have a very fast, efficient lineup, and then you're stuck waiting for the other person to finish. And what ends up happening for me a lot is that I'll feud, I'll score a lot of points, and then I just get bored of waiting, so I'll just stop feuding. So if you find a good partner, if you have a really good, efficient setup, it'll go faster, you'll score more points, and you'll have more fun. So try it out.
Absolutely. So with all that being said, guys, I want to thank the Button for being on the show. He was pretty fantastic. Also want to just reiterate one more time, I still think Tough sucks, especially for feuding, and I still think X-Pac sucks. Sorry, everyone that I've offended, but that's just the way I feel.
I'd like to reiterate that had I known this was the timeline where Del Rio is not the champ, I would not have come to this filthy, horrible place.
Okay, then. I guess on that note, thank you all for sticking around for the end of it. Join my Discord, be part of the mail so we can get some good comments in here to answer all of your super important questions on champions. I know everyone wants to know more about the button. Hopefully he'll return again someday. I don't know that he'll be back again soon. He's very busy. He has lots of different space-time continuum places to visit and help. So like, subscribe, share, all that great stuff. We do this every week and try to get it out by Monday or Tuesday every week. Sometimes it'll be on the weekends. We are the longest running podcast for WWE Champions, so just saying, that's got to count for something.
Take that, Ralph Cable.
Yeah, what he said. So yeah, thanks, Button. And thanks for listening, guys.
Yep, thanks for having me. And guys, remember, it's a game. Relax. Have fun with it.